Hello, Buttercups. Welcome to another exciting episode of Topic Discuss. We have an exciting guest tonight, all the way from Perth, Australia. Dr. AnthonyChaffee, I think, is how you say his name. I'm going to have to ask him during our interview. He is a physician, neurosurgeon, I believe, or finishing a fellowship in neurosurgery. We'll have to ask him that too. But he has a podcast and a lot of interesting information in carnivorous diet versus a plant-based diet. In fact, I think he would even say that plant-based diets are not even good for us, or we were maybe not even evolved to eat plant-based diets. So we're going to ask him those questions. We are going to push on him a little bit to see where his evidence is coming from. And more than anything, I just want to get to know him better. So buckle up, Buttercups. It's another episode of Topic Discuss. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. So I need to make sure that I say your name right. It's Anthony
Chaffee.
Chaffee. Okay, I mispronounced it.
That's all right.
And you are, and thank you so much for taking time. I know that you're really busy, and maybe you could just take a minute to let our audience know a little bit about you. I think what's exciting is you finished your, you're a physician, and then you were a rugby player, or maybe still are. I don't know. And then, are you doing a fellowship, or did you finish your neurosurgical fellowship?
No, so I'm still training. I actually left my original training program for a family emergency back in Seattle. My folks were having some issues, and so that took actually a few years to settle down. And thankfully, they're both fine now. But yeah, it was just sort of, some issues came up, and I needed to be home with my family for a while. And so after that, I was doing humanitarian work in Bangladesh, because as I was taking some time off, I had some friends that worked for an international nonprofit. And they told me about this, the largest humanitarian crisis in the world at that time, which was the Rohingya refugees escaping over from Myanmar into southern Bangladesh, because there had been a genocide in September 2017, where unofficial numbers were about 200,000 people were killed in about a month, and 1 million people fled into southern Bangladesh to try to escape that. And there weren't really enough people going. Yeah, it was huge numbers, and there was 1,000 people coming every hour.
What year was that?
That was 2017.
Yes, that's probably another topic for us to discuss. When I read that in one of your bios, as I was kind of trying to learn more about you, it's going to sound ignorant. I had no idea that was happening.
Yeah, well, look, it's not surprising. I had no idea it was happening until I was called and asked to help. And I was shocked, because I was like, have I been living under a rock? Like, I watched the news. I tried to stay current in world events, and I hadn't seen a word of this. So I was like, okay, obviously I'm missing something. So I just started studying, just going through every single news channel and international news channel and 24-hour cable news, everything. I looked through everything, and no one was talking about it. It was absolutely shocking, and I think there were a number of reasons for that, but I think probably one of the main reasons is because it wasn't like one of the sexy humanitarian crises, like Haiti or Nepal. It was just a real one. And so, it was just, and that sort of thing actually happens a lot. When I was over there, you start actually hearing about, from these different people that make it their career to go around to these different areas of disaster and humanitarian crises. And they're just talking about all these different things happening all over the world that you just never hear about, and I never heard about either. So I was quite surprised by that as well. But then it's a bit weird. I think there's a few things in play, because the leader of Bangladesh at that time, who's certainly implicated in all of these killings, won the Nobel Peace Prize for her
Wow.
humanitarian work. And I think that might, embarrass a few people internationally who backed her and said what a wonderful person she was. And she's complicit in these genocides. But what they don't realize, she got that because, she was the first so-called democratically elected leader of Burma, now Myanmar. But before that, it was also all these military dictatorships. What they fail to mention is that her father was the original military dictator of Burma,
Oh,
who started all these genocides and these horrible atrocities. So I don't know anything more about her than that, but you have to sort of wonder if she's not in a similar line of thought as her
for
father, who
sure.
was military dictators.
Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it
We
was a
thought
pretty.
the same thing about Putin. We were
Yeah,
saying when he got into power that suddenly democracy's in Russia and Putin's different,
right.
but right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So when you went there to, how do you say it, Miramar or Myanmar?
Myanmar. Yeah, it's been Burma.
Myanmar,
Yeah,
Burma.
it's formerly
Were
Burma.
you an MD at that time, or you were
Yes, it
like
was.
what residency or like family practice or?
No, so I'd finished I finished medical school in 2013, and
Mhm.
then in my third year of residency, training to be a neurosurgeon, I left that in order
Oh,
to go help my family. And then so from middle to late 2015 to then 2017, I was helping my folks, and then I went to Burma, or sorry, to Bangladesh, to help with the refugee crisis there. And so I was there between 2017 and 2018, and I was asked to come, to stay on and run the field hospital that was being built there for the charity I was volunteering with, which I didn't necessarily want to do, but I felt that I needed to do because it was important. Really weren't enough people going there to help out, which is why I felt the need to go in the first place. Because Bangladesh is a very, very dangerous place on a good day, and this was not a good day. And they support ISIS for one thing, and so ISIS was
mm,
was quite active at the time, and there were a lot of killings and bombings, and they
wow.
yeah, they blew up a hotel because there was one American staying there. So they wanted to get that American. So they blew up the entire hotel. And I think they killed something like 90 people, maimed another 170, but they got that American. So it's all worth it. And we're blowing up cafes and restaurants that would cater to international clientele, and or just take them over and take them hostage and execute anyone who couldn't recite the Quran in Arabic. And so this went on. And
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So it was quite a hairy situation, but and because of that, and because it was so dangerous, people just weren't going in the numbers that they needed to be, and so there were a lot of people that were in very much in need, and so I felt that I couldn't justify not going. I didn't have a wife and kids and family that I was directly responsible for. So I just said, like, look, if it's me going over there and dying, that's just me. But if I can go over there, I can help people, and I might be able to help hundreds or even thousands of people, and I think that's worth it, to risk.
So when you, how long ago was that?
That was
Oh, I
between
guess
2000,
2017.
2017, 2018. Yeah.
Yeah. And you ran the field hospital. So were you doing, what kinds of things were you doing? Surgeries or?
Yeah, well, so the field hospital hadn't been built at that time. So actually, I ended up leaving and waiting. I said I would run the field hospital, but
Mhm.
I had to go back to America, uh, and I had some things I had to do there and take care of in person. And so I said, okay, when the field hospital gets built, then I'll come back. But it actually ended up taking like another most of the rest of the year before the field hospital actually got built because of rainy seasons and different delays. So I
Wow.
didn't end up going back and running that. So I was helping out we had 6 clinics set up around the camps with an organization, a charity called Hope for Bangladesh. And they normally dealt with, you know, OBGYN sort of issues, female health and childbirth and
Yeah.
things. nature, but I was doing things more of a general nature because I had a background in a bit more of a broad background, obviously in neurosurgery. I had history, experience in trauma and emergency department medicine. So not that I was fully trained in any of these things, but I had, some of each. And so I had a more broad set of skills and experience. And so I took on more of a general role, and anything that was sort of non-OBGYN, I would sort of deal with to the best of my ability, which was,
Yeah.
it's interesting, because you're there in a very third world country and in a very impoverished area of an impoverished third world country. And, so you don't have access to any sort of equipment or investigations or imaging that you would normally have. So everything is purely clinical exam. And then you sort of make a decision, you make a diagnosis, and now you don't have like the normal equipment that you would use. So you just have to figure something out. And I've actually always been really interested in that side of things. I think that's sort of real medicine, where you just, you figure out the problem and you just have to figure out how to deal with it. You're not just having things prepackaged and delivered from Stryker saying like, oh yeah, you have this and it makes this thing and now you do this thing. It's really algorithmic, and you almost don't need a person there to make those decisions or take action. So I think that that was something that was very interesting to me as well.
So in some of my previous lives, working in my career, I ran a trauma program, and I started it up and then advanced it to a level 2 trauma, which in your case that meant we needed to recruit neurosurgeons. So I'm curious about like, just because I understand the intensity of the neurosurgical or the neurosurgery residency, and is that why you're on call so much? I mean, are you in
Yeah.
neurosurgical residency as we speak?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
Okay.
it's just an absurd amount of on call. So
You don't have a social life?
not really to speak of, no. So like, yeah, I really have too much time outside of work. I mean, just this past week, well, actually the past 2 weeks. So today's my first day off in 22 days. And the only reason I had the day off before that is because I actually took some leave. So I was away in the Philippines for a bit, and then I came back and it was just bang 22 days straight. Some of that's on call, so weekends on call, but just the nature of neurosurgery and just medicine in general, when you're on call, like you're basically working the whole time. And so we have, obviously you going around in the mornings on the weekends, but then you have to deal with any problems that come in, and you're dealing with all the on-call, taking all the phone calls and doing all the consultations from your hospital, but also because in Perth, this is the only public sector neurosurgical department in all of Western Australia, which landmass wise is about 1/3 of the continent of Australia. Obviously, it's sparsely populated, but it does cover a large region, and so you have to make the decision on whether you're going to fly someone in to Perth and send out a jet to pick this person up and fly them back in. And so you're just getting a lot of phone calls and obviously surgeries when you need to deal with that. So the last 2 weekends in a row, I was on call. So you start your on call at like 7 a.m. on Saturday, and then you technically finish at 7 a.m. on Monday, but then I actually have my normal work to do on Monday. So you keep going for another 12 hours. So,
and is your normal work like in a clinic? Are you doing some outpatient work?
Most of it's in hospital neurosurgical care. So yeah, we'd have clinic days certain days, and then surgery days other days, and then you're always dealing with emergencies as they come in.
So I just want just the audience just to give a shout out to what do you like to go by? Anthony, Tony, Dr. Chaffee?
Oh, Anthony's fine.
Out of respect, we'll say, Dr. Chaffee, it is a really big privilege for us to have you on the show because your time is so precious. So I do really want to make sure we honor the time that you're giving us. And I also have a special place in my heart for the work that you're doing. I'd love to learn more about, the international work that you're doing too. And it's stunning because you've done so much. How old are you? Do you mind if I ask?
No, it's fine.
You look very young.
No, I turned 42 just in January.
So you've accomplished, so much in your life. What do you want to do for another 20 years? Like, what's on your horizon?
Well, obviously, you want to finish training in neurosurgery. I absolutely love the field and the specialty. I think being in the operating room and doing these sorts of surgeries, I think, is just one of the most fascinating experiences in my life, and I absolutely love that, and I love being able to help people, and also, neurosurgery it's very critical life and death sort of issues that you're dealing with. You have someone come in, and all of a sudden they've got some sort of compressive issue on their spinal cord, and they will be paralyzed if you don't fix them, and you don't fix them quickly and properly, or they're having some trauma, and they're bleeding on their brain, and so you don't decompress that, you don't fix that bleed, they're going to die. Brain cancers as well, all sorts of different things. I think they're very high stakes, and I like that. I like the intensity of it. I like having to be perfect and make the right decision. I'm not always perfect. I'm still working on that, but I like being challenged in that way. That drives me to be my best. That's always been the same in sports and athletics. When I had coaches that just demanded perfection and they would just ream you out if you didn't get it, I liked that because I wanted to be perfect, and they had just a little thing to say, like I would the next time it would be right there, and so that's what got me better and better and propelled me to be as good of an athlete as I could be, and I like that in medicine as well. I like being able to make hard decisions and do the difficult tasks in order to help people, and then seeing them recover and talking to their family and helping them through really hard times is something I feel is very important. So I definitely want to keep doing that. I really enjoy that, but I also really enjoy helping people in a preventative medicine sort of way as well, and reversing a lot of issues that people didn't heretofore think that could be reversed. They thought these were chronic diseases that just were only going to get worse, and yet we're seeing them completely evaporate. Now, autoimmune issues, for instance, I mean that's one of my favorite things to treat, is because just simply on an elimination diet like a carnivore diet, these things just melt away. You have Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, and they just disappear. And this is on histological biopsy of the colon. So you have this person that have a very bad case of IBD on biopsy, shown on biopsy. Then 3 months into a carnivore diet, they don't have any more symptoms. They're off all their medications. Then they get a biopsy again. There's no sign of the disease. I think that's just absolutely fantastic. And so I want to continue doing both, and to even incorporate that into my neurosurgical practice, because there are a lot of things that we deal with in neurosurgery that are very much that could be benefited by this as well. A very simple example would be pain, chronic back pain with shooting pain down the legs, like from a trapped nerve. That can respond very well when you reduce inflammation in people's bodies. They reduce that amount of pain, and sometimes they don't even need surgery. They don't feel that's necessary, which I think is great. I'm happy to do less surgeries if people don't need it.
So, could I? There's so much. This is very interesting. Could I ask? Is it too personal if I ask you a little bit more about
Yeah,
your personal life, so people,
that's fine.
because you have a very interesting background. So so where did you do your undergrad?
So I did my undergrad. I started at the University of Washington when I was like 16, and then
So you were
because
16 years old when so I have a broad and eclectic audience. Some of my audience members are actually even at the age of 14 all the way to 72. So I
nice.
think that it's inspiring. Could you explain a little bit how you went to a university at age 16, how you made that happen?
Yeah, well, it was sort of by good luck. I had a good friend of mine, John Lainey, who I actually was in the Philippines with. His mother's from there, so his parents retired there, and he's a corporate attorney in Seattle now. And he's been one of my best friends since I was a kid, since we moved up from California to Kirkland, Washington, outside of Seattle. And we were good friends, but also we were sort of the only two people that could keep up with each other in school, and so we just sort of naturally gravitated to each other because of that. We were all in the honors classes together, and and both sort of had a good grip on things. He came up to me in 8th grade and told me about this program that the University of Washington in Seattle had, where if you took the SATs through them and you got a high, above their average score of their accepted students, that you could just start taking classes as a matriculated student at the University of Washington. And he said, "Oh, do you want to do it?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, why not? When is it?" And he's like, "Oh, it's next Wednesday." I'm like, "Next Wednesday?" I'm like, "How am I supposed to do that? Like, I don't have a book, I haven't studied. How do you just take the SATs out of nowhere?" And he just said, "Dude, we're 13. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, just take it, just see what happens." And I was like, "Yeah, that's good. That's a good point." And so, we both took it and we both did quite well. And so, we didn't do that in order to just start going to college. We did it just to do it and hopefully not have to do it again in high school and just have that over with. But I was always taking advanced classes. He and I actually were taking our math and science classes at the high school when we were still in junior high. And, it got to the point where I was looking to, I was going into high school and I'd already taken all the math and science classes that they offered. And those were all the classes, those were all my favorite classes. And so I thought about it and I said, well, I'm going at an advanced rate, but now I have no more classes to take. So I'm just going to not take, any math or science for the next, 3 years. And then I'm going to go to college and I'm going to I will have forgotten everything and it won't be fresh and I won't be able to build on this. What's the point of going at an accelerated rate if you then start at the same point and actually at a disadvantage because I will now have forgotten everything. So I just said, okay, well, that doesn't make any sense. And so I used that to then start taking classes at college and I actually really enjoyed it. I enjoyed college much more than I enjoyed, junior high and high school. I actually hated school at that time because I loved learning. I loved learning new things, but just how they approached it, it was just
The
so much
public
busy.
school.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. It was just busy work. They were just trying to waste your time.
They're
And
babysitting you for,
mm,
I don't know.
yeah,
That's not a nice way to say it, but that's what it feels
yeah.
like.
Well, it is. And, actually, my father was speaking to sort of an in-law who was I think she was anyway, she was in charge of, like a school superintendent or something like that in a school district in Washington. And he asked her, like, okay, so how do you guys, you know, structure your homework? What are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to accomplish? How are you trying to teach these kids? What are you trying to get out of it? And she told him that what they aim to do with homework, the aim with homework was to give the students enough hours of work so
Yeah.
that they didn't have time to go out and cause trouble in their neighborhoods. And it's just like, that is none of your damn business. And I certainly, I certainly noticed that. I remember just like in seventh grade, because I had done sort of private school before that, charter schools actually, which is something in a lot of cases better than public and private schools. I got in and all of a sudden, like the homework was just tedious. I remember looking at it and I was just like, this isn't hard. It's not interesting. It's not challenging me. It just takes a long time. And I just hated that aspect of it. And so I really had an aversion to school and to homework. And then to the point that I would basically I would just play sick all the time. And because I just hated going there. And like, I looked at my attendance record at one point. I basically missed I missed like 3 out of 4 Mondays every month for like the whole year. And I was like, oh God, that's bad. I didn't think I was doing it that much, but it was just, I just had such an aversion. It was just an obnoxious experience to me. And then when I went to, the math and science classes were great, because that homework meant something. You were doing problems, you're figuring things out. That all made sense to me. It was all the busy work, essays and nonsense that you had to write. I hated that. And then so I went to college, and all of a sudden it was just like they didn't care if you showed up. They didn't care about all this busy work. They just wanted you to do well on the test. It's like, do you know it or you don't? And I love that. And so as a result, I was there every single day. I had like a perfect attendance record, and
You had intrinsic motivation.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah,
because I was
too.
interested, I was much more engaged in these classes and enjoyed the experience much more. And so I had near perfect attendance record. Um,
So
and
did
I really
you,
enjoyed it a lot more.
and so you finished, where did you finish your undergrad? Was it in Washington or was it?
I ended up transferring actually to the University of Arizona. Like my a best friend of mine at the time. We played rugby together. We were all American rugby players together. And like my plan originally was to go to Berkeley. That's where my parents went. My father did his was in grad school there when he met my mom in undergrad. He was a physicist at the Lawrence Livermore Radiation Laboratory at Berkeley.
Wow.
And and so he sort of grew up there. And pretty weird background. Like my father, at that time, Berkeley High School was one of the top high schools, in the nation. And like his best friend, Walter Alvarez, was a guy who came up with the theory about asteroids hitting the Earth and killing the dinosaurs as well. Now he's a professor of geology at Berkeley. So there were a lot of like crazy people at my dad's high school class, which was funny.
Wow, that's cool.
So I was thinking,
so rugby took you to Arizona?
Yeah, exactly. So I'd always thought that I would go to Berkeley, and Berkeley was actually the top rugby program. So that's what I was thinking. But my best friend really wanted to go to Arizona for family reasons. And like, we were very, very close. And like, the plan was we wanted to sort of keep playing together and finish college together. So I decided to go down there and, immediately felt it was a mistake. And it was like the wrong thing to do. Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, Arizona, like from a biological sciences standpoint, is actually quite good, but it's not really up to the same standards as like University of Washington or Berkeley would be. And so I was just a bit disappointed with that. And probably more importantly, I had a horrible experience with the rugby team there. I thought the coaches were just megalomaniacs and just had these absolute power trips. They were embezzling money, like tens of thousands of dollars. We were just fundraisers just constantly. And they were just taking in the money and just spending on whatever the hell they wanted. And so I just thought it was just a really nasty, corrupt program with a bunch of nasty, corrupt people. And, just small people living small lives and taking out their aggression and frustration about their own mistakes and their past choices and decisions, and taking them out on people that were, subject to them. And I just absolutely hated it. So, I got out of there, but that's where I ended up finishing off. I actually went back to University of Washington, and then I was playing in England for a while, and then I came back and I just basically had a couple credits left, and it was easier to then just basically finish those couple credits at Arizona and just finish, as opposed to like University of Washington was going to make me jump through a whole bunch of hoops and do like another year and a half of courses. And I was like, I'd just rather finish. So I ended up finishing there.
And so then medical school was where?
At the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland.
In Ireland. So,
yeah.
That's so cool. You've got such a cool background. So I hope you really have a good experience, because I think I'd like to bring you back on to talk about a lot of other things. I'd like to talk about Ireland. I'd like to talk about your experience. There's just so many things that you have mentioned that's very interesting to me, but I know would be interesting to my audience, like charter schools. And so you have you're going to fit well into you're going to have fans from my channel, but
good.
And I want to be respectful for your time, but so I do have. Let's see. Is this kind of a weird transition to dive right into a no plant diet after?
That's fine.
You just have such an interesting. You have a very interesting life. So anyway, hopefully we can do some more interviews.
Yeah, definitely.
So we'll make this a good experience, so you want to, but so no plant diet is it's really interesting to me. Part of I do have somewhat of an eclectic career too, and I mean, not I have not been all over the world like you have, but I have spent a lot of my career in healthcare and most recently genomic medicine. I have moved over to space, working to help the Artemis mission build an infrastructure in space, which is another topic which I'd like to talk to you about more, because telomeres will lengthen the longer you stay in space. And we're
really?
going to be building, yes.
No, that's
so
awesome.
You get younger, literally.
That's badass.
So I know.
Yeah.
So we're gonna build a moon base on the South Pole. Not we, but we'll be part of this. But the Artemis mission will be building a moon base on the South Pole. And there's a lot of medical implications we have to understand about humans living in a low gravity environment.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing we do know from the space station is that when a human, there's a study done on twins, right? And that's how we know that telomeres of the twin that stayed in space for a year lengthened.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, though, is that when he came back to Earth in Earth's gravity, the telomeres almost immediately shortened, and maybe even more so.
Wow.
So it's stunning and it's fascinating. And so part of my work in genomics related to the microbiome, specifically with the gut biome, and there are so many linkages to cancer. And what I started with, where I started in genomics was in cancer genomics and cancer genetics. But what I never really had time to fully dive into was the microbiome, except understanding, the fact that there is one and it is complex and has a lot of ramifications right across, across the spectrum from disease to aging. And then the one other thing I wanted to talk to you about, I just want to throw out there is diet and mental health as well, because of serotonin and dopamine and all those kinds of things. But there is so much, there's so many, diet ideas out there, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's the keto diet, and it just starts to I hate it because I really want to understand the gut, and I want to understand how it relates to our brains. I mean, there's a big connection, or a significant connection between the gut and the brain, and those neural pathways and the mesenteric bed. And so the only studies that we've ever produced, like research wise, peer reviewed, that show a definitive action to reduce disease related aging or age related diseases is low calorie diets, right? So diet, it just plays this role, but we just kind of suck at really putting some research around this. There's not consensus or agreement. Like, for example, I know of a study on diabetic patients who, one cohort went on a low calorie diet, the other on a ketogenic diet. But we couldn't really, the studies aren't very useful because there's not an agreement on, just really focusing to say, was it the ketogenic, the keto diet or ketosis that resulted in stabilization of insulin, or was it the lower calorie? So, okay, that's my soapbox. I personally, so this is just me, I'm taking off any scientific or medical hat. Me personally, I've always found that I think I feel better mentally when I'm not eating carbs, but I've never equated this to plants. And there are plenty of people that watch this show, Anthony, I want you to know, that are vegans. And so I'm excited about the controversy.
Yeah.
I'm excited to call this no plant diet because I've been surrounded by, kind of vegans, and I'm open and I'm listening. So we're going to talk in this episode with you about what it means, what a no plant diet means, and what have you experienced. You have the floor. Take it away.
Yeah. I just want to say, obviously, everyone makes different decisions in their life for different reasons, and people can go vegan for a number of different reasons. And I think that, there's always room to discuss these sorts of things because, people don't generally make a massive change in adaptation in their life without serious thought and consideration into it. So I never, I'm not one of those that just go like, oh, these stupid vegans. I don't think that at all. I think that, most of these people are trying to do what's right for them. And they really are trying to live the best and healthiest life that they can. And if they're worried about environmental and ethical concerns as well, these are things that people, are actually, putting a lot of thought and care into. So I'm never down on people like that. I think that's great that people are so conscious of that and their own health and the health of the world around them. So I just come from a purely nutritional standpoint, and obviously there are ethical concerns and environmental concerns too, which I think are appropriately discussed and addressed in this as well. But just focusing on the nutrition side of things, we are animals, and we are a certain kind of animal. All animals have a specific evolved diet. Dolphins don't eat a wide range of things. They eat fish. They eat meat. Lions, the same thing. They're not eating a whole bunch of different herbs. But also panda bears. Panda bears are not eating all sorts of different plants. They're eating a specific plant. Same with koalas. The reason being is because we all have our evolutionary niche, and so that's the same with humans. And so we have an evolved diet, whatever that is. I argue that it's a carnivore diet. I argue that we're carnivores, and there's evidence for this. But it is something. People say, well, everyone's different. Everyone has, slightly different, or this, that, and the other. So, plants are good for this person, meat's good for that person. But you'll never see in nature, two members of the same species that, one is an herbivore and the other is a carnivore. That doesn't happen. And unless something's starving to death and they're just sort of eating whatever the hell they have access to. People say this to me, and my response to them, my question to them is, okay, can you name one example in nature where two members of the same species have a different optimal diet? I don't know of a single one, and genetically it wouldn't make any sense. So genetically, we've been nearly the same for about 300,000 years. Obviously, there's some adaptations here and there, but mostly we've been the same. And so, whatever we were 50,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, we are still now genetically. One of the main reasons that pandas only eat bamboo and koalas only eat eucalyptus is because plants are living organisms, and they like to stay living organisms. If they get eaten, they die. So if they're just going to sit there, they're stationary. They can't run away. So any bug, any bird, any animal just eat all the leaves off, and they just die, and they die. Well, they will go extinct if they can't defend themselves. All living things have a defense, all the way down to single-celled organisms. And now, while an animal can run away or fight back, plants can't. And so they have to use different sorts of defense mechanisms. One of them is mimicry, making little buds on their leaves to make it look like there's caterpillar eggs on there, so butterfly doesn't lay its eggs on that leaf. Another one is by actually using toxins. So the actual plant itself, is poisonous to animals eating them. This is true for all plants and basically all fungi as well. And so, we think of that. You can think about this naturally, right? We think about this just inherently. Most plants are inedible, right? You go out in the woods, you get lost, you run out of food. You can't just eat any random plant because most of them will kill you. They're inedible. Well,
or you won't get the necessary nutrition.
Well, you certainly won't. Yeah,
or combination. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so the so-called edible foods also are very much nutrient deplete. You cannot get full complement of vital nutrients for the human body from plants or fungi. They don't exist. There are a number of different nutrients that just simply don't exist. It's not just about protein. There are so many other things, but I think more importantly is the fact that you get these poisons along with them. So these so-called edible plants aren't edible because they don't have poison in them. It's that we have some adaptations and defenses to those poisons. So we can eat spinach, and the poisons in spinach, oxalates and all these different sorts of things will do some things, but our body can mostly handle that. Whereas we had some, North American, water hemlock, you're dead in 2 minutes from intractable seizures. Like you're not going to make it. We don't have any defenses against these. You're going to die.
So this is kind of like, I like to use the example that the I don't want to use the word normal because that might turn some people off, but kind of like the evolutionary state of the human is to not have the right digestive enzymes to digest milk as adults. And so that's the steady state. And then because of exposure to northern climates and cold climates, humans drank milk in order to survive. And so they developed a gene, it's an allele, right? A slight mutation that gives them the ability to digest milk as adults. Well, it's funny because we'll say to, people that are, kind of are their ancestries from the equator, we call them lactose intolerant, when really that's the natural state of the human, right?
Yeah.
Having the ability to digest lactose is not, it's really a mutation.
Yeah.
Not that that's bad, but that's kind of
Mm.
the example, right? Like, I think what I hear you saying is that there's kind of this baseline state of genetics that through which we evolved
Mhm.
with with big brains, bipedal, and all these pieces, and the variations come because of exposure or some adaptation,
Yeah. Well, certainly.
which is true for plants.
Yeah. Yeah. And so and that's exactly right, because we have obviously adapted with the agricultural revolution. And so certain genetic populations had exposure to agriculture thousands of years before, say, the Aboriginal Australians or the Native Americans, who only came across it, in the last couple hundred years. And as a result, Caucasian populations and other populations have started to build up, a bit more robust defenses against these things. But something that, sorry, you're on mute.
Sorry. Well, no, this is
Yeah.
just this is really good because so part of what happened too is we domesticated plants
Mm,
so that we could
yeah.
eat them.
Mm,
Corn is a good example of that, right?
yeah.
That's not edible until we domesticated it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And so, we're eating very different plants as well. We've sort of genetically modified them through intensive breeding. And other populations, have not had that exposure. So, I learned when I was a kid that Native Americans, when eating a Western diet, were 4 times as likely to get obesity, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, all the major killers and diseases. And I remember thinking at the time, I was like, well, doesn't that mean the food is causing the disease? Because if they don't eat the food, they don't get the disease. And we eat the food and we get the disease, we just get it at a lower rate and it takes longer. And so it's just like, okay, well, what is a non-Western diet? What are they eating that we're not, and vice versa? They didn't say it at the time, but the answer was they were carnivores. They, like, think about the Plains Indians. They were just eating buffalo. They would run a herd of buffalo off a cliff. They would all die at the bottom, and they would preserve the meat and make pemmican and dry that
Okay.
out and eat that through the year.
So would you say then that naturally we are not omnivores, but that
And,
we are
yeah, well,
carnivores?
it really depends on your definition of omnivore, right? And so I have a sort of a slightly different working definition of an omnivore.
Okay.
What omnivore really means to me in any sort of real practical sense is not just something that eats plants and animals, willy-nilly. I mean, a cat is known as an obligate carnivore, and yet it
Right.
can eat some plants. We give it plant-based kibble, which is also a reason why plants are getting sick, or cats are getting sick, and cancer and diabetes and lupus and all these sorts of things, because they're
Yep.
eating the wrong thing. Zoo animals as well. You feed them something they don't eat in the wild, they get these issues as well. We get them as well. I argue that this is from the food. So cats are obligate carnivores, but they can eat some plants. Does that mean that they're omnivores? No. We recognize that as a carnivore. They have to eat meat or they will die, right? And most plants will kill them,
So
right?
with dogs, though, and maybe this is because we've domesticated dogs more
Mm.
than we did cats,
Mhm.
because dogs they are not obligate carnivores like cats.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, yeah,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
They're sort of like they would be termed scavenger carnivores, so they can eat a little bit more, but they certainly can't eat as many plants as we can. We come from an herbivorous past, about 8 million years ago, so that's closer in evolutionary history than canines or felines. So
Oh,
we've sort of we still have some of these remnants left over, and we didn't really go full carnivore until, like, so 2.5-3 million years ago. So we still had some plants in our diet, according to the fossil record, and then likely the ice ages hit in, and this killed off a lot of plants and killed the animals that ate the plants, and now we just have these big
oh,
mammoths and things like that, these megafauna that were able to survive during the ice times, and then the predators that were hunting them, including our ancestors, who were already figured out tools and tactics to take down a mastodon when we had no business killing a mastodon with our bare hands. But that's why we developed our brain. That's why we developed tools, is so that we could take these things down. Because while a lion and a wolf had developed teeth and claws, so they can take things down physically, we developed our brains because we had to take sort of a circuitous route to getting the same end. And so that's why we
So
developed.
could you talk a little bit about the evolutionary connection between high amounts of protein and the human brain? How important that is or was for brain development and really just brain evolution in the Homo sapien.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was funny. There was a study I remember reading years ago, and they said, trying to figure out how we develop these big brains and gave the energy for them. And they figured, like, what it must have been is that they must have eaten a lot of honey, because honey is so calorically dense. They must have seen a lot of honey to fuel this brain. And it was interesting because they said that, like, actually to get all the nutrients that we would have needed to grow a brain, we need this kind of fish from here, we need this kind of thing from there, we need this plant from there, and this thing from here, and this thing from there. And there was all these, like, geographically diverse foods that were just all there. They weren't really found in the same place, which doesn't always make sense. And I remember just looking at that and I was like, well, first of all, the honey thing, like, density is calories per gram. So honey is exactly as calorically dense as protein and bread. What is actually calorically dense is fat. It's 9 calories per gram. So that's actually caloric density. So actually it would be fat that would be a better food if you're looking for caloric density. But also,
and if you're Neanderthals in a freezing climate and your brain is big, huge, Neanderthal brains are huge. They weren't eating honey. They were eating meat.
Yeah, exactly. And going back millions of years, we actually know that animals our ancestors early 6 million years ago were scavengers. They were sort of eating the leavings and the pickings of bigger animals that killed these, because we couldn't kill these things. We didn't have the big teeth and claws. And so, but what's one food source that by definition has every single nutrient that you need for your brain? Right? So, if you eat a brain, you're getting all the nutrients you need for their brain. So they're looking, oh, you need all this other different thing. No, you just need to eat some brains, And that's actually what we see in the fossil record, is that we have these animals that had their skulls cracked open with rocks. And so there's evidence to suggest that, going back millions of years before the first work stone tool, about 3.3 million years ago, our ancestors were using pound stones to crack open the skulls of these animals. So these animals got picked clean, but there's a brain in there. And then, so they crack that open, they're able to get, extremely good nutrition from that. And then, so that's how they started to, develop further, and having to use your brain, having to figure out ways of solving this problem and getting the food that you needed, push that evolutionary drive to develop bigger brains and more intelligence. And we're fueling this with fat and protein and helping maximize our brain's potential. Our brains are made out of very long chain fatty acids, 20 and 22 chain fatty acids, and also all different sorts of things like DHA, EPA. These things don't exist in plants. We can't get them from the plant or fungus kingdom. And we can't really make them ourselves. So we have to really get them from animal sources.
I'm totally with you. The thing that I get confused is when I think of a brain cell, it needs oxygen and glucose. All of our cells do to function, and the mitochondrial process. In fact, as you don't need fructose, for example, can cross the blood-brain barrier without insulin even.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm conflating plant-based with carbohydrates or glucose. So like you said that every nutrient that you would need is eating the brain of an animal. So I understand, like, the brain of an animal would have proteins, would have fats. Is there glucose too? Is that a stupid question?
Oh, no. I mean, look, there is some glucose in there, but the most important thing is we make glucose, so we actually maintain our blood sugar when we don't take in exogenous
That's
carbohydrates.
true. That's true.
You know,
Yep.
yeah, and so we will always have glucose available. And so in fact, it's much easier for our body to regulate our blood sugar levels when we don't take in exogenous carbohydrates, because we're having to try to micromanage our insulin, and we're getting these insulin swings, and our blood sugar goes up and then it crashes because our insulin stays up, and now it's forced all the blood sugar
So
out of
our
our
liver evolved to create for gluconeogenesis. So
well, the thing is, it was probably already there, because
okay.
we have studies looking at in 1981, looking at wolves, where they said, like, the idea then was that you need to eat carbs in order to burn carbs. This was the push for athletes, and it still is the push for athletes, which I, as an athlete who only ate meat for 5 years playing professional rugby, I can tell you for a cold frozen fact, you will never perform better or at a higher level than if you do not eat carbohydrates.
Really?
So, yeah, absolutely.
And you personally experienced that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, no, I've never, ever felt better. From when I was 20 to 25, I was strict carnivore, well, strict no plants. I wasn't thinking about it in the context of a carnivore diet. And I absolutely played out of my skin, and I never got hurt. I never got sore. I never run out of energy. I could just push myself so hard. And because I did push myself to as hard as I could, my growth was exponential, where everyone else was linear. And so I went so far past the physical and fitness levels of those on my team and the people I was playing against, that it was just sort of stupid at one point. I mean, I was looking at this going like, I couldn't get tired. I would train for 8 to 10 hours a day every single day, and then I'd play multiple games on the weekend, because I just wanted games after game after game. I just wanted to play as much as I could, because I just loved the game, loved the sport. And so I got to the point where I was just like, I could probably sprint a marathon and not slow down at all. And I was just like, I was just thinking, like, I should just enter a marathon and just sprint the whole damn thing. I was just like, I'd probably like set a world record in my first marathon, and just like, that would be hilarious. But, and I was thinking to myself, I really should do this, because I'm never going to be this fit again in my life. There's no way I could be. And, and I really should timestamp this on like just exactly how fit I was. But I don't know, the thought of just running a marathon, just running for 26 miles straight, just seemed just so boring to me. So I didn't really pursue it. I figured that, like, if I saw like a Seattle Marathon coming up or something like that, I would just join it. But I didn't really look for it, so it never happened. But no, absolutely, out of this world difference. You have boundless energy levels. Think about it this way: when you eat carbohydrates, that raises your blood sugar. High blood sugar is actually bad for you. This is actually, it causes glycation. These glucose molecules actually physically fuse to different molecules in your body, and they damage them. And so,
do you feel like that they kind of act like sandpaper along the vessel walls? Sometimes that's how I picture them. Picture that, and then that's what actually will build up plaque along the. Yeah. Is that?
Well, it could be
accurate to you, or is that
Well, it could be. I don't actually know if it causes direct damage to the vessels, but what it does do is it glycates LDL cholesterol and knocks off ApoB100, which is the receptor that the liver recognizes, and that's what sucks up this cholesterol. So when you only have one of them, there's only one on each of these molecules, and so when you knock that thing off, now all of a sudden nothing can recognize it, and it's just it doesn't get picked up by the liver.
Say that one more time about LDLs.
So LDL,
heard that before.
Yeah, so LDL cholesterol have a molecule on them called ApoB100, ApoB100, and that's a receptor that your liver recognizes, and it can suck it up and pull it into the liver and recycle it and do whatever it wants to do with it. Once that thing's knocked off, and it will get knocked off from being glycated, from having high blood sugar.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding? So it gets knocked off from being so then it just stays in, so the LDL so that just stays in the bloodstream.
Exactly, and the only things that can pick it up are the scavenger receptors on your macrophages. So this is why you get those big foam cells in the macrophages, and then and it's involved in a larger inflammatory process, and obviously you have to get damage over your arterial walls. But what is a macrophage going to do? It's going to go to that area of damage, and it's going to try to fix it. But now it's this big fat bloated thing, and it gets stuck, and it can't work properly because it's all
the inflammation is there.
Yeah, and so now you got this buildup of plaques, which are these big, massive foam cells that are just full of this LDL cholesterol, but it's only full of LDL cholesterol that has its ApoB100 knocked off. And if you don't have high blood sugar levels, or fructose. Fructose actually does this at a higher rate than glucose does, knocks off these little receptors. And they do just all sorts of different things. They do this all over your body. And this is what kills diabetics. Just the having high blood sugar damages your body, and having a high insulin damages your body, because this derails our biochemistry.
So LDL, I'm sorry, I'm stuck on the LDL. I think I had an
Sorry.
aha moment, because no, it's good. Is there evidence then that people will maintain lower LDLs if they're no plant-based diets?
Well, the thing is that the LDL that they have is actually good for them. So that's the
But
main
an
thing.
elevated LDL, I mean, is there a way to measure that?
Yeah, well, you can check it. It can be elevated, but the LDL that you have are good for you, and you can look at different particulate studies, and you can see because there's a lot of different kinds of LDL cholesterol, and so you can actually look at this particulate study, and you can see if you have the healthy LDL or if you have the damaged, broken, dysfunctional.
See, the reason I'm bringing this up is I mean, I'm trying to do a lot for my own health and stuff. I don't mean to make this all about me, but
That's all right.
I have high LDL, and so does my family, and it's genetic is what, and there is evidence, right, for familial or inherited hypercholesterolemia. But when you talk about LDL, I just wonder, and maybe that's a test I could do myself, is to see if my LDLs change. I just think it's interesting what you're saying about the LDLs.
Yeah. Well, there is a way you can do particulate studies, and you can look at this is the good healthy LDL, which is good for you. Dr. Ken Berry obviously has been talking about these sorts of things for years, and especially cholesterol. And he says HDL is your good cholesterol, and LDL is your other good cholesterol. This stuff is actually good for you. It just can be damaged, and that can play a role.
I had no idea.
Process.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm learning so much. Okay, keep going.
And, so you can kind of sort of look at this on your own without getting a particular study. If your HDL is high and your triglycerides are low, that's more likely that you will have undamaged, healthy LDL cholesterol. So you don't necessarily need to do the particulate LDL, like looking at the exact type of LDL that you have. That's usually a good indicator. Now it's not always perfect, but it is a good indicator. So just having higher than what we consider out of the reference range LDL, isn't necessarily a bad thing for a number of reasons. One, our cholesterol is highly labile. In fact, we see the highest LDL in people who've been fasting for a long period of time. And so they're not eating any fat at all. They're not eating anything at all. In fact, their LDL is high because your body's mobilizing fat, it's mobilizing energy ketones. So that's the first thing.
I've seen that.
Yeah. And so the other thing is that all the evidence and the studies to suggest that LDL was a problem in the first place have actually been shown to not only have been false, but fraudulent. The Journal of the American Medical Association published in 2015 actual internal memos from the sort of the 60s, 50s, 60s sort of era, talking about, from the sugar companies, their own internal memos and documents talking about how there were studies and evidence showing that sugar had strongly correlated with the rise in heart disease. And they were like, okay, we need to get out some opposition research here. And in their own words, they detailed how they paid off 3 Harvard professors to falsify data and publish fraudulent studies to make it appear as if cholesterol was causing heart disease when it was really sugar, and to exonerate sugar and call it an empty calorie. Just it's just an empty calorie, but it's not bad for you. And one of those professors was named head of the USDA, and it was he who authored and published the USDA declaration in 1977, saying point blank, cholesterol causes heart disease, saturated fat increases cholesterol, stop eating both. And people listened, because now teachers said, weighed in, and this was hotly debated for decades. I mean, there was a Journal of American Medical Association, JAMA. There was an article they published in 1956 that I read, looking at all the evidence to suggest that cholesterol caused heart disease. And this doctor was just like, it's widely accepted that the cholesterol theory of of heart disease, but it's really based on really crappy evidence. And you'll hear the studies and hear why they're crap. And there's this big long thing going through the evidence. So this was hotly debated for decades. And then they got Ansel Keys in the mix, who's a very famous researcher. He came up with the recommended daily allowances and sort of other things in nutrition. And this is someone that a lot of people, in the other opposition camp always quote all the time. They say, "Oh, Ansel Keys, he did all this wonderful work and all this sort of stuff." Well, okay, maybe read something about him in the last few years, because we actually have documentation that he was bought and paid for by the sugar companies as well. And his major study, called the Seven Nations Study, is what everyone hangs their hat on, really. And this looked at these 7 different countries around the world and plotted on a graph. The more higher their cholesterol rate, the higher their heart attack rate was. And it was parabolic. It was this exponential growth. And so we were like, oh, well, that's it. That's conclusive. Well, no, that's correlative, and correlation is not causation. And it's funny, there was a guy that tried to trash, because I did a whole episode on my podcast on cholesterol, going through all of this, going through the studies, going through the history. And he watched a clip here and there, and then he just started railing this guy, Vegan Gains, who's a very vocal vegan. And he was saying, "Oh, this is stupid. We have all this correlative evidence that proves causation." It's like, buddy, correlation cannot prove causation. That's a definition of terms, and this guy doesn't actually know enough to even know that. And yet people are listening to him by the tens of thousands. And so, no, it was a correlation. It was not a causation. There is not a single study showing causation between cholesterol, higher cholesterol or higher LDL cholesterol, and saturated and heart disease. There isn't a single one. There's no high level evidence to even suggest a correlation or a high level correlation. And so the 7 Nations study would be more appropriately named the 23 Nations study, because Keys actually took in full records and information for 23 different nations. And if you plot those, it's a complete scatter blast. It's just a shotgun blast all over the graph. There isn't even a correlation. It's just all over the place. So he picked the ones that fit his parabolic curve. So this is fraud. This is knowingly defrauding people. And so the thing is that correlation can never prove causation. But if you show that there's no correlation, that proves there is no causation, because you cannot have causation without first having correlation. And so his own study showed that there was no correlation, which means there is no causation. And that's actually what we're seeing now. People have been redoing this. We have this, research coming out of UCSF and Dr. Robert Lustig in 2009, and since then published dozens of papers about how fructose is actually metabolized into the same byproducts as alcohol by our liver, and we get the same disease processes from those breakdown products.
So that's from eating fruit. I mean, that's where we're getting fructose.
Well, it's mostly from processed sugar, right? So sucrose is half fructose. Yeah, but look, if there's there are areas in India where the mangoes just are so plentiful that for 3 to 4 months out of the year they're just dropping all over the place, and so people just eat mangoes for 3 or 4 months, and they have the highest rates of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, in all of India. And so the government actually said, you cannot eat. They actually put a legal limit on how many mangoes these people can eat. And
and just for the audience to hear that, because I do think that I know that there are people in my audience who really don't understand that high amounts of fruit like that. It is natural, doesn't mean that it's healthy, and it's hard to talk about that, because it's definitely, I'd rather them eat that than a lollipop, but I just appreciate that you brought that in as an example of this is something that did come from nature, but not necessarily are we design's not the right word, but evolved to digest it and use it and eat it. So I'd like to go back to, I love the evidence you've talked about regarding ancient humans, right? And the evolution of Homo sapien. So in a nutshell, could you describe, from your perspective, and really just from the research you've done, what is the evolutionary state we've evolved to, in terms of what we should be consuming for our
Yeah.
energy?
Yeah, well, that sort of goes back to what we were talking about before on the definition of what an omnivore is, and to me, in a real practical sense, an omnivore is one of two things. Either it's an animal that can eat from the plant and fungi kingdom and the animal kingdom, willy-nilly. They can get equal nutrition out of both, or that there are things in plants that they have to have that they cannot get from meat. And there are things in meat that they have to have that they cannot get from plants. And so they have to eat both. We do not fall into either of those two categories. There is nothing in
say that we do not fall into either of those.
We do not fall into either of those, right? There are no nutrients in plants or fungus that we have to have that we cannot get from meat. But there are nutrients that we have to have in meat that we cannot get from plants. And so to me, that means that we're actually obligate carnivores, because maybe we can eat some plants and we can eat them more safely than a dog or a cat, but we cannot survive without meat. We are obligated to eat meat. We have to eat meat, and we get harmed from eating plants because there are these toxins. Now, while they aren't as deadly to us as they would be to cats, or like, a dog eats a tomato, it's gone. But it does still cause harm for us, but also we cannot get the nutrition. So to me, we are obligated to eat meat. We are obligate carnivores. And if you look at the fossil record with the stable isotope study and a lot of other different sorts of things, the University of Tel Aviv by Professor Mickey Ben-Dor, he published this massive thing looking at all sorts of different points of data and concluded the same thing, that our ancestors have been, obligate carnivores for at least the last 2 million years, if not more.
2 million
at least.
Not
yeah,
the last 200,000, but 2 million.
No, yeah.
Wow.
And it's actually because our ancestors turned to eating meat that they evolved into us. So we are human because they went carnivore. And so that's what actually drove that evolution to what we are today.
What are those, is it too hard to kind of reduce down what are those key nutrients that only we can get from meat that we cannot get from plants?
Side. Yeah, well, there's a ton of them. There's B12, D3, K2. You'll never get enough vitamin A because you'd have to eat 6 pounds of carrots a day to get enough.
That's true.
Not going to really happen. There's all the there's carnitine, there's creatine. What else am I thinking of? There's all the different essential fatty acids, or DHA, EPA. Those don't exist in plants. We do actually need them. And then, all the very long chain fatty acids, the 20 and 22 chain fatty acids that I mentioned before, these things don't exist in plants. We don't make them enough. We are obligated to eat them. They are essential. And so we have to take these in, and they only exist in animals.
What kinds of animals? So we're getting into chickens versus cows versus eggs versus fish. What kind of animals?
They will be in all of them to varying degrees. But yeah, so you think about fish. Fish has a lot more DHA and EPA than other things. But a grass-fed cow is going to have a ton of it. Omega-3s are quite abundant in a grass-fed cow. But after about 3 months in a feedlot, it actually goes towards zero on the amount of omega-3s that they have. So that is something to consider. A natural cow is going to be just fine. It's going to be perfect nutrition for you. And that's just the skeletal meat too. You don't need to worry about organs if you don't want to. But
the things that are ringing off of my head right now, though, are like, but we can't sustain feeding cows grass with the environment and global warming and.
So go ahead. No, but that's the thing though, is that certainly, and that's what that's certainly what we've been told, and that's certainly what. When we look at this, it seems like on the surface, but when you actually sort of dig in a little deeper, it actually changes the picture a bit, because, well, there's a lot of reasons, but at the fundamental level, animals and plants evolved together. These big grasslands evolved with big ruminant animals that were eating the grass. We had hundreds of millions of buffalo and deer and antelope, all these roaming around the Great Plains. before we settled everything down. And the grass was 9 feet tall. The early explorers that went west were talking about how they could tie the grass over their horse's head. They could tie it in knots over their horse's head. So this was very, very fertile. And that was because the animals were there fertilizing it. So manure and urine fertilizes the ground. This recycles these nutrients. We talk about like, oh, they're creating all this methane, they're creating all this CO2. And like, well, no, they're not creating anything. They're
Well, I'm
recycling.
thinking more about just like the water needed to.
Oh, yeah. But
irrigate.
think about that. Well, how that's calculated is a bit misleading as well, because how they calculate that, they estimate the amount of rainfall on a field to grow the grass, and then the cow eats that grass. So they're actually counting that water as it's just not just like water that you're shipping in for them to drink. And then when a cow drinks water, it doesn't just disappear. They urinate that out, and it then goes and waters the ground. So it actually is very efficient. You don't actually waste water. That water stays in the environment. And in fact, it's used as fertilizer. That urine fertilizes the ground. And that's actually what makes the ground fertile. So there are people, we notice that when we like take animals out of an area, those areas tend to turn to deserts. And there's a guy, Savory, who's written textbooks on this, going back 40 years, who for 40 years has been taking large herds of animals, bunched and moving, pushing them through deserts that don't have a blade of grass. And you keep doing this, all of a sudden there's these verdant, tree-filled grasslands. And, they did that in Patagonia. They took like 20,000, 25,000 sheep, ran them through this desert area in Patagonia. And in 1 year, they had 50% increase in the plant growth, plant production. There are a lot of grasslands all over the world.
But don't we produce a lot? Like where I'm at, we have a bunch of alfalfa fields that we're irrigating with water. We're in a drought, but we do all this irrigation to create alfalfa that we actually ship off to other countries to feed their cattle. And so that ground is not it does not have animal grazing on it. It's just alfalfa that we batch and send off for feed.
Yeah, well, absolutely. But that's the thing, what's damaging the ground there? Is it the animals or is it the plants? That plant is growing, and that's taking nutrients out of that soil, and you're not having animals go around it to then replenish the nutrient. I mean, this even goes back to the Bible. They said, you grow things on the ground for a certain number of years, and then you take an entire year and you don't grow anything, and you let animals come on and roam on it and live on it, and then you go back to it. Well, it's the animals that actually replenish the nutrients in the soil. And so, people make the argument like, well, if we only grew plants just for our consumption and didn't do it for animal consumption, then, we wouldn't have any problems. But that's actually not true. 93% of the feed that animals eat are actually inedible by humans. It's the hay stalk, it's the corn cob.
Yeah, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. I don't think, I guess I just hope for a solution that is, is there a way to get us that because I am very much on the same page about like I really like how you talked about how we are obligate carnivores, but just I guess I hope for some sustainable ways to make that happen.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if there's a way to do synthetic meats. But the point is, I guess, is clearly we are obligate carnivores based on what we're talking about here, which actually I don't know why that feels good to actually say, because then it's not like the adaptation that I think what I'm hearing you say is the adaptation of things that we've done to domesticate food, and that we've adapted, I guess, to be able to eat plant-based things and processed foods is actually not, it's actually creating disease over time, right?
Yeah, no, it is, and I think that's actually probably the main cause of all these, this massive uptick in chronic disease, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, even cancer, autoimmune diseases, Alzheimer's. You talk about how your brain works better, you feel on a ketogenic diet. There's a good reason for that, because we get insulin resistance, right? And that's the point that you can't actually get in more glucose into your cells like your brain cells. And so actually your brain's not running fully powered. But when you go into a state of ketosis, even when you have more glucose than ketones, there's a certain point where your brain just switches over to only running, well, almost exclusively running on ketones.
What's your brain fueled on right now?
Ketones. I mean, some glucose,
So
but mostly ketones. Yeah.
Your brain is functioning from ketones.
Yeah, mostly. Yeah, I mean, it'd be some sort of glucose as well, but
But mostly ketones.
Yeah, Professor Ben Bickman from BYU, he's been studying insulin for 15 plus years, and he's been sort of showing a lot of this stuff, with very hard science. And I learned in biochemistry 22 years ago that that our brains actually primary and preferred energy source are ketones. We always run on ketones. Our brain always runs on ketones, even when we have tons of blood sugar. And
oh, really?
Mostly, yeah. So even like when we're in a so-called fed state where we're eating exogenous carbohydrates, which I actually argue is a pathological protective state where your body's trying to protect you from high blood sugar. So I'm like, oh Jesus, what has this guy done? This high blood sugar is going to hurt us, so we need to increase our insulin, just get this stuff out of there. Whereas like fasting state is actually our primary metabolic state. I was talking about the wolves. Previously, they said, "Oh, do they have blood sugar? Do they have glycogen? They don't eat carbs when they chase caribou for 10 hours. Where do they get their energy?" In fact, they do have blood sugar, they do have glycogen, and they do have ketones, and they're rock solid. They don't change. They're perfectly in balance to provide the energy that they need for whatever they're doing. And when
that's the true homeostasis, then.
Exactly, and so
we're supposed to be in.
Yeah, and so when we are exercising in a state of ketosis or on a carnivore diet, ketogenic diet is very good because it's getting rid of something that's quite harmful to us, and it's getting us closer to our biochemistry and our physiology, which is a carnivore one. And so when you're in that metabolic state, the so-called fasting state, that's not a fasting state. That's the primary metabolic state of almost all animals in the wild, including humans, because they're only eating meat in the wild. And so when you're running a marathon and you're eating carbohydrates, eventually you'll hit the wall, you'll crash, and most people stop there. But if you keep pushing, you'll break through the wall, you'll get your second wind, and you'll get your runner's high. These are all terms that have been around for decades. What do they mean biochemically? They mean that you've exhausted your blood sugar, you've exhausted your glycogen, and now you don't have any more energy because your insulin is up, and insulin blocks proteolysis, it blocks lipolysis, so it stops you from mobilizing your fat stores, which are basically limitless in comparison to your glycogen. Yep. And so when your insulin's up, now you're stuck. Normally it takes about 24 hours for the insulin to drop down and for you to access your fat stores. This is why people always talk about training fasted or on an empty stomach or intermittent fasting. This is why you're waiting out your insulin and your body can actually mobilize energy. So if you force yourself,
and you can go through, you can access fat reserves and
exactly. Yeah. And so now if you push yourself and you hit that wall, but you keep pushing through the wall, you break through the wall, what that's doing is forcing your body back into its normal metabolic state. And now you can actually produce energy and you feel great because you're just producing all this energy and you can just go forever. Well, I live in that state. I'm always in my runner's high. I'm always in my second wind. So when I work out, I'm producing energy.
Let's talk about that then, Anthony. I know that you woke up this morning at about 8 a.m., 7 a.m., or that's when you emailed me.
7:30 or so, yeah.
All right. So have you eaten yet? Anything? Or
Nope.
Will you eat anything today?
Yeah.
What will you eat?
I just made a brisket. So I just smoked put a brisket in the smoker overnight, like Friday. So it's
brisket?
I was ready. Yeah, it's big ass brisket, big thing like that. Yeah, so it's awesome. And so that was all I was eating yesterday. And so today, at some point I'll just go and slice off a couple big slabs of brisket and just eat that. And that's all I'll eat for another 20 hours or so.
That's all you will eat.
Yeah, but I'll eat a few pounds. I'll eat like 2-3 pounds, but in one sitting, and then because if you're eating high density nutrition, you don't need to eat as often or as much. And so
let's talk about that brisket. So that's all you're going to eat, 2 to 3 pounds. So what's in the brisket that you just smoked? Like you haven't put any sauce, I assume. It's okay. So what nutrients are packed into that brisket?
Well, so, I mean, it has everything. It has absolutely everything. It has complete proteins, has all the vitamin and mineral complements you'll need, it has all the fatty acids essential and otherwise that you need. And, some of these things aren't even considered essential because we make them like carnitine. People say, oh, no, you make carnitine. Not everyone. And not everyone makes enough as they need. And in fact, more carnitine is implicated in many, many health benefits. For a start, it increases your number of testosterone receptors. And so if you have testosterone level of X, but you have 2X the amount of receptors you have, you are going to have more of a testosterone response, for the given amount of testosterone that you have. And so it's also very, very vital for neuronal development. We cannot develop neurons properly without carnitine. And there's actually, I think it was Texas A&M showed that a certain kind of autism comes about from a carnitine deficiency. And so in people that are genetically incapable of making carnitine or not enough carnitine, if they don't get this from their diet, they will develop this form of autism because their brain cells won't develop properly. Most of this was hidden in the past. We have this spike in autism rates as well as heart disease and cancer rates, which we didn't see before. Well, this type of autism was masked because basically everyone was eating meat, and meat has a lot of carnitine in it, at least some carnitine. Red meat has a ton of carnitine. What's the first?
Red meat. So red meat has carnitine.
Basically all animal products have carnitine, but red meat has an abundance of carnitine.
And when we say red meat, that means like ungulates.
Ruminant animal meat. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, goats, cows, sheep, things like that. What's the first thing that vegetarians drop when they're dropping meat? They drop red meat. That's the worst one, right? That has the most cholesterol, most saturated fat. It's the worst. Actually, it's the best. And so if they have kids that don't make any carnitine at all, and maybe they're breastfeeding, but the mom's not taking in that much carnitine and not much is going through her milk. But sometimes people see this sort of autism kick in at a certain age. It could be that they're getting everything they need from their mother's milk, and all of a sudden when they're weaned and they're eating some other things, all of a sudden they start seeing problems. And so one of these things is because they're not getting enough carnitine. So if they're eating, like lean chicken and some fish every now and then, mostly vegetables, they might not be getting enough carnitine, and their brain cells will not develop properly, and they will get this type of autism. Vegans have a little more of a problem because they're not taking in any animal products whatsoever. And so even if their child just has a slight deficiency in carnitine, they'll also get this. When just a bit of steak, it will actually stop them from developing this form of autism. So I think that's a major, major.
So, how would we translate this to a young reviewer, maybe a 14-year-old boy who's, I'm thinking about my son. His name is Axel, and he's, doing push-ups. And every day he's starting to care more about how he looks, and he wants to eat more protein. He's not going to eat brisket right off the bat, and so like how do we translate that to kind of the population, because it just seems like a huge amount of meat. So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, as far as appealing to the individual, you just sort of appealing to something that they would be interested in. Your son is sounding like he's an early teenager. He
loves eggs.
That's perfect. Eggs are fantastic. Yeah, go to town on the eggs. Yeah, and he's doing
Axel, did you hear that? Anthony said you can go to town on the eggs.
Yeah, absolutely. There are people that like exclusively live on eggs. There are certainly examples of that. And it's
you don't see any, there's not an issue with that, like, because sometimes I've heard that, I know this isn't true anymore, but probably in the 70s and 80s, eggs were connected to cholesterol, and so you have to get cholesterol-free eggs and all this BS. But
so cholesterol is super good for you. It's one of the most. It is an essential nutrient. We make it, and that's how essential it is. But we only make about 70% of actually what we require. Every single cell in your body, as I learned in 8th grade biology, is made out of cholesterol. The cell membrane is cholesterol, and this is where the proteins sit in. Your bile is made out of cholesterol. Bile is what helps your body emulsify and absorb fat. You have 4 organs working in concert just to absorb fat. Why would fat be bad if we have 4 organs working in concert just to absorb fat? If this was bad for us, why would we go to the bother? Why would evolution waste its time? Liver makes bile, gallbladder stores it, pancreas makes lipases and other enzymes to break it down, and our small intestine absorb it. We have 4 things working together just to absorb fat. That means that fat is very, very important. So is cholesterol. Cholesterol is the precursor to all of our major hormones: testosterone, estrogen, progesterone.
That's right.
Cortisol, all our mineralocorticoids and glucocorticoids, they all are derived from cholesterol. Cholesterol is a vital nutrient. Just from a muscle building standpoint, there was a study that just came out in the last few months that showed that cholesterol intake was a direct factor in muscle growth. So if you want more muscle growth, you want to take in more cholesterol. Your body will build more muscles. So your son, being someone who is interested in developing his body, being more athletic, just getting into sports, wanting to look good, to be, just an attractive human being to whoever he's attracted to. These are all things that are very normal for people. Mm-hmm. If you're going to eat meat, you will be the healthiest and best looking version of yourself that you can be genetically. And you will be able to perform athletically and physically and mentally to a much higher standard and to your genetic potential, which I can tell you is at a much higher level than we give it credit for. Specifically for him, still going through puberty, especially going through puberty and early development, this is when this is most vital. You and I, we're static. Our tissues are permanent now. Yeah, I know, it sucks. And so, our brains and bodies can work better, but our bones aren't going to lengthen. Our brain isn't going to expand. His can. And so yes, he can actually grow taller, more muscular, broader shoulders, better bone density, larger, more efficient and effective brain. Okay. And he will optimize his hormones through
That's
puberty,
powerful.
So yeah, I think about this. I wish I could go back to your son's age and redo this or even before. Because none of us developed to our genetic potential. Because
I was eating Fruit Loops as a 14-year-old.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I was eating we weren't allowed sugar cereal, only rarely, but we had certainly Cheerios. That was a big part of it. I hated them. All I wanted to eat was meat and eggs. That's all I wanted to eat. And thankfully, I was very meat centric, but I ate all the other crap as well because I was forced to. And so I didn't develop to my genetic potential. My brain is not as big as it would be. I'm not as intelligent as I would be. I'm not as tall or strong or as athletic as I would be.
Will I grow back my hair if I do an all meat diet?
You never know. Like the thing is that some forms of hair loss actually are again from hyperinsulinemia. When people are just in a high insulin state, this actually can damage all sorts of cells and processes in our body. Yeah. And actually, this is linked to hair loss is being in a hyperinsulinemic state.
Yeah, I do think I've heard that called it makes you look like you have smoker's hair, right? It just doesn't look as healthy and clean. And so my daughter, who will be watching this, I'm sure, who's just under a year or 14 months younger than Axel. Her name is Samara. She wants to be, as she's thinking about eating healthier, her desires are more just like she wants to feel better, sleep better. And so she's kind of focused with her friends on green drink, right? So they grind up, spinach and collard greens and maybe a little peanut butter and apple juice or something. So out of everything that's in there, what would be on this diet? I think I know the answer, but just to be clear, what would we say no on that type of a drink? The whole drink?
Yeah, the whole thing. And think about why she has to add,
including nuts.
Oh, especially nuts. So nuts are a seed. A seed is a plant's baby. All organisms protect their baby more than anything. And so this is actually where you'll find the highest concentration of poison. So this is why you have cyanide in almonds. And so, something like, 1 pound to 2 pounds almonds, there's just varying amounts of cyanide in each almond, is a lethal dose of cyanide in an adult, right? Wow. And we give this stuff to kids and sell them it's good for them, which is crazy to me, honestly. It actually, defies sense. And so there are a lot of seeds and beans, grains and beans, all these things have tons and tons and tons of lectins and other sorts of problems that are just absolutely problematic. The amount of protein in them aren't actually accessible. Wheat protein, 80% of that is gluten. Gluten cannot be accessed and broken down and used as protein in the body. So wheat has you have 20 grams of wheat protein in this wheat thing. You're only getting 2 of those. At most.
So like the whey protein shakes that I'll buy, or soy protein, can we access those proteins?
Yeah, absolutely. You can, okay. But you don't need to eat these things. And a lot of the protein shakes have a lot of artificial sweeteners, which you really don't want. And so really you just need to eat meat. You will absolutely get enough protein from just eating meat. The other problem with the green drink, think about the reason why she has to add peanuts and has to add some apples and things like that, because it's if she just drank just the green stuff, it's disgusting. It is so bitter and so nasty. Why would we have evolved to hate the taste of the most of the healthiest thing for us? That doesn't make any sense. Like deer don't go around eating the crappy tasting leaves. They eat what tastes good. And so, that doesn't make any sense. They don't have like health coaches going around and like, I know this tastes horrible, but it'll look great on your ass, and like, they eat what tastes good. That's a natural thing. And you have the taste test. You see animals in the wild sort of think that they don't want it because it tastes bad. Well, give an infant broccoli who's never had it before, and they will cry. They will hate it. And that's because they're more in touch with their genetics than we are, because we've been sort of drummed down by years of indoctrination saying that this is good for you. This is good for you. So we've associated this bitter, horrible taste as something that's good for us. And we've associated this wonderful, beautiful, blissful taste that is bacon with something that's bad for us. Oh no, that's bad for me. That's really rich. That means that's bad for me. No, it's actually really good for you.
Okay. So Samara loves bacon. So would bacon be on Samara's list?
Absolutely. And just be careful because, oftentimes they'll add a lot of sugar to it. So if you can get,
like turkey bacon.
Well, turkey bacon, it's all about the additives. The pig is fine. It's just that adding sugar to it is the problem. Now it's not going to be
like got brown sugar on it or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Or like the maple bacon or whatever. Yeah. Those things are a bit worse than others. Sometimes if it's just normal bacon, they almost always have some sugar in there. And
how about she likes salmon with butter?
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Butter's great for you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, butter's fantastic.
Why butter?
Butter is just a very nutrient dense fat, and it's perfect to add.
Plant.
And it's definitely not a plant. Yeah. And a lot of these things, when in the dairy industry, these things are eating just grass. And so this is really healthy stuff. It's tons of omega-3s and DHA. It has a lot of butyrate as well. That's what gives butter its name, is because of butyrate. One of the things that people say, especially in the sort of the vegan community, is that you have to have plants, you have to have fiber, because some of this fiber gets broken down into butyrate, and that's what feeds your enterocytes, so the cells in your gut, and they have to run on butyrate. Well, they don't have to. A, they don't have to run on butyrate. They just like to. And B, we make butyrate. One of the main ketone bodies is butyric acid, which is butyrate. So, when you're in ketosis, these ketone bodies are butyrate. They're going to be feeding your enterocytes, and you get these from your diet as well. Butter being one of them is a great source of butyrate. So, butter's fantastic. I add butter, grass-fed butter, all that stuff. If like a steak is too lean and I want to up my fat, because I try to get actually like quite a high fat intake, like 70 to 80% of my calories I get from fat. And that's sort of what you see in nature of animals getting. And the primates. Sorry?
What about cheese, since we're talking about?
Yeah. So the only sort of dairy I really use very often is butter. I'll add that onto meat. Cheese is fine. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with cheese. Some people have different problems with milk proteins. And that can cause inflammation. You have the A1, A2 proteins. A2 is less inflammatory than A1, but it still is actually slightly inflammatory. Some people are fine with cheese. I'm fine with cheese. Other people aren't, especially people with autoimmune issues. They are much more sensitive to these.
So what about milk versus almond milk or soy milk? Like cow's milk versus almond milk, soy milk?
Yeah, so I would never in my life drink almond milk or soy milk. And I may drink normal milk sometimes, but it has enough lactose in it that it will give an insulin response, which I don't want. So some people, when they're going on a carnivore diet, they say like, wow, my energy levels are pretty low. I don't really feel great. And sometimes there's plenty of things that can be of issue, but mostly it's that they're still having artificial sweeteners, which can raise your insulin and that will drop your blood sugar. Or they're drinking milk every now and then. And so that increases their insulin, and now they're dropping their blood sugar. Because I think that eating a low carb diet is worse than eating from a feeling point of view, from a how you feel point of view, is probably worse than eating a high carbohydrate diet. Because if you're just eating a little bit of carbs, you'll get that insulin spike, but you won't actually be feeding all these carbohydrates to keep your blood sugar up so you feel good. You get a little bit, enough to spike it up, but then now you're hypoglycemic and you just feel crappy and slow and tired. But the insulin's high enough that it stops your body from producing its own glucose and ketones and glycogen. So you end up actually shooting yourself in the foot there, because you're not getting the full benefits of being carnivore, but you're not actually giving yourself enough carbohydrates to actually be functional. And so milk can do that. And I also find it's slightly addictive as well. I just want to keep drinking milk. And that's partly because your blood sugar is dropping. You feel like crap. So, I need to get that hit. And so you can end up, just sort of being a bit carb addicted, which is not a great thing to do. It also causes you to overeat, because when that insulin's up, obviously your blood sugar is going down. So now you want to eat. But insulin does something a little more insidious. It blocks a hormone called leptin, which we commonly know as comes from a stretch receptor. So your stomach and duodenum fill up, and that sends off a signal of leptin to go to your brain and say, oh, hey, we're full. But actually, most of it comes from our fat cells, our adipose tissue. And that tells your brain how much fat you have and how much energy you have in reserve. And so if you're blocking that, your brain gets a signal that you have zero energy reserves. And now your blood sugar, and so now you're low blood sugar. So your brain sends off this signal that says, hey, if you don't eat now, you will die. And fructose compounds this, because fructose independently blocks leptin, and it also upregulates ghrelin, which is the counter to leptin. Is when our stomach is empty, those same stretch receptors now produce ghrelin, and that tells your brain, hey, we have nothing in the pipeline. So now your brain thinks that you have zero leptin, so you have zero energy reserves, and you have nothing in the pipeline. So it's just like, eat now or you're dead. And this is why we panic eat 3 times a day and get hangry and just be like, oh my God, I have to eat. I'm starving. And, some of these people are quite overweight and they're like starving and they're frantic. And you're like, you're not starving. Like, I saw what you ate this morning. Like, that can last you a week, but that is exactly how they feel. And so, it is very, very uncomfortable to actually be getting these signals that you will die if you don't eat and not do anything about it. That's a very uncomfortable thing. And so most people overeat, and milk can certainly do that because of that insulin response. So I tend to avoid milk for that reason. And dairy in general, I will use it as a condiment, but I will never use it as a meal. I will never just eat cheese. I will melt cheese onto meat, but meat is always the meal, because while cheese has a lot of things that are good for you, it doesn't have everything. Like, you're not gonna live on cheese. You can subsist for a while, but it doesn't have everything. Meat has everything. And so that's really what you want to get most of your nutrition from.
So when you eat 2 to 3 pounds of brisket, how many calories is that?
Oh, I don't know. I don't count calories. Yeah.
You don't care. Okay.
No. We were talking about like, are people getting health benefits because they're in ketosis or because they're just reducing their calories?
Low calorie diet.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, and who was this? Rhonda Patrick, who went on like Joe Rogan, and she talks about this sort of stuff. She wrote like a 30-page paper, basically, talking about what she found wrong with a carnivore diet. I respect her greatly, but I completely disagree with her on a lot of these points. And one of the points that she made was that when people go on these elimination diets and go into like a carnivore diet, they naturally start eating less calories. So really it's just calories in, calories out. That's where the benefit
I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that before.
Well, what I think that she needs to realize, and what other people should realize, is that is really significant. I mean, think about how significant that is. People are naturally calorically restricting themselves. Their bodies are naturally telling them exactly how much nutrition they need, exactly how many calories they need. Whereas when you eat carbohydrates, your body's telling you eat more, eat more, eat more, eat more, and you have to look and use a calculator.
You've hijacked all your you've hijacked all your signals. Your
yeah,
biology.
exactly. So you have to keep track of that stuff because your body can't keep track of it for you now. But you know what? If you need a calculator to figure out what to eat, you're probably eating the wrong thing. Nature is natural. It just happens, so we should be able to eat our natural food, and we get the exact amount of nutrition we need. And that's further evidence that, we are carnivores because we are naturally geared up to do this.
So have you just naturally kind of evolved to this place where okay, I like the brisket and I'm good? I mean, when you first started, was it kind of experimentation and maybe you did eggs for breakfast and a steak for dinner or something? Or have you always because when you say you just have, the reason I asked this is the other thing I could hear some people in my head say is, well, he's intermittent fasting, right? He's got an eating window. And so then that's really why he's lean. But you're saying that how did you come to the place of a brisket a day?
Yeah. So the thing is that intermittent fasting is certainly beneficial when eating a mixed diet, a Western diet with carbohydrates, because you're waiting out the clock on that insulin. And so then you get into your primary metabolic state and, you feel a lot better because of that. And this gives benefits. It absolutely does. One of the things that Rhonda Patrick said as well was that, when you're a carnivore diet, you're in a metabolic state that mimics fasting. We have all these studies that show that fasting is really, really beneficial. And so though this just mimics fasting, so that's the benefits they're getting, is just, the same as what you get from fasting. Or maybe fasting mimics the metabolism we're supposed to be on and would be on if we were eating our natural diet. Wouldn't that make more sense? Wouldn't it make more sense that when all of our heavy machinery come to bear, when all of these benefits that we get from metabolic state X, wouldn't that make sense that X was our primary metabolic state? Wouldn't that make sense? Isn't that, and also when you look at other animals in the wild, that's what their metabolic state is. The only reason we call this a fed state and that a fasting state is because by the time we were able to look at biochemistry at a molecular level, everyone was eating carbohydrates. And so they said, it looks like this. And when you don't eat, it looks like that. It's like, yeah, but when you eat anything except carbs, it also looks like this. Okay. So actually that's really, I argue, is our main biological metabolism. So that's where fasting comes in. Fasting is a benefit if you eat carbohydrates. If you're eating the wrong thing, that's just giving your body a break from things that are bad for you, basically. There aren't any studies that I know of that show a benefit of just not eating versus eating a ketogenic diet or a fasting mimicking diet, which is just a ketogenic diet, and being in this fasting metabolic state. All the things that show, like, well, you can reverse type 1 and type 2 diabetes in animal models. You can reverse different autoimmunity, all sorts of different things. They look at a fasting mimicking diet and say, whoa, fasting is really hard, so people don't want to do it. But if they're on this fasting mimicking diet, they actually get the same benefits. And so, again, this is just arguing that, this is the state that we're just supposed to be in anyway, and you're eliminating things that are bad for you. So I fully understand where they're coming from on that, because people look at this, you eat once a day and that's good for you, but that's why it's good for you. And so it's going to be good for me anyway. So in fact, I don't only eat once a day. Sometimes I'll eat more than once a day. Sometimes I'll just, have like a bit of leftover steak or whatever in the morning. It'll just sort of still be out and I'm just getting ready for work. And I'm just like, that looks good. I'll sort of snack on it. I'll just eat like half a steak. Then I'll
go off. Just intuitive? You're kind of intuitively.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It should be intuitive. And so you actually have to relearn your hunger signals when you go on a carnivore diet, because, heretofore we think of hunger as this starvation state, and you have to feel like you're starving to death. Mm-hmm. And that's what hunger is. So that actually caused a problem for me when I was first doing this in my early 20s, because I didn't know that. I hadn't figured that out yet. And so I was under eating significantly. I would go 2-3 days without eating and not even realize it, because I was training so much. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd go straight to class at UW, and then I'd be in rugby. Half an hour after my last class ended, I would be, in rugby from 3:30 to 10 every single day, right? And then I have games on the weekend. I might go to the gym after that. And so, I was just going, and I never felt hungry like I traditionally did. And then I get home and I'm like, ooh, I don't really have time to eat. It's sort of midnight, and I just need to, I need to study, and I need to read, and I need to go to sleep because I'm up early. And so I just pound down a bunch of water and then just go. And then all of a sudden I'd just be like, I was like, oh shoot, I have a little more time. Maybe I'll cook something. I was like, yeah, because I didn't eat yesterday. I didn't eat the day before that. Did I eat the day before that? And I was like, okay, I need to eat something. And it really did caught up with me. It eventually caught up with me, and it ended up damaging me. And I figured out, okay, I need to eat more. I'm like clearly not eating enough. You go by taste. So if I tell people that, if a steak doesn't taste good, you're not hungry, because there are a lot of people that come to carnivore because they're trying to lose weight, and they have, they have a different relationship with portion sizes than other people. And so they're eating all these sorts of things, and they start eating, they're going, I really don't like this diet because, meat doesn't taste good. I'm not enjoying it. And I asked them, I was like, okay, does it always taste bad, or is it just at first, or at first, does it taste good? They said, well, I mean, yeah, at first it tastes really good, but I get halfway through the meal and it's just horrible. I spend 2 hours force feeding myself. And it's like, well, actually that's your body telling you that you don't need to eat, because I tell people, eat as much as you want to eat, as much as you enjoy eating, because, you may want to finish down a party platter full of beef, but that's not what you actually want, because you're actually forcing yourself. Like, oh my God, I hate this. So you clearly don't want to eat that. And so that's what I tell people. If a steak doesn't taste good, you're not hungry. But if it does taste good, you are, and you should listen to that. One thing that some people do, they call it priming. I don't, you can do this or not do this, but what some people do is that in order to relearn these signals, what they'll do is they will try to eat several times a day, and they'll just eat to satiety. They'll eat until it stops tasting good. And then 4 or 5 hours later, they'll again eat more meat until it doesn't taste good. And they'll sort of do this 3 times a day for a couple of weeks. And then they'll sort of be able to understand what hunger actually means. You can do that, but or not. But the thing is that if you're sort of feeling a bit off, or you're feeling, like something's a bit wrong, maybe think to yourself, is this hunger? Is this what my body's telling me when it wants energy? Certainly when you get cravings, certainly when you think like, oh my God, I want to eat some bread, or I want some, Cocoa Puffs or something like that. That's your brain telling you, give me energy. And so, give it energy, eat some eggs, eat some meat. And if it tastes good, that means you're hungry. Keep eating it until it stops tasting good. And a couple hours later, if you're kind of feeling a bit off, try it again. When you do that, especially when you have weight to lose, your body will naturally go into a state where if you eat to satiety, especially if it's fatty, if I'm eating more lean meat, I'll definitely be hungry more than once a day. Because if you look at it this way, if you have 100% lean ground beef, and you have 50-50 lean to fat ground beef, and you have a pound of each, the 1 pound of 50-50 beef has 3 times the calories and nutrition as the lean beef. So you're eating 1 pound of beef, but you're getting 3 times the calories. So you don't need to eat as much. Whereas if you're just eating the lean beef, you're going to have to eat more often if your body wants more calories and more nutrition. And certainly it's going to want more nutrition, because you can get a thing called protein sickness or rabbit poisoning, where if you're only eating lean meat, your body's just like, no, you need the fat, get the damn fat. You need to eat more fat. And so, you end up you're actually eating more and more and more, and eating voraciously. But your body doesn't stop, because it's not getting the nutrients that it really wants. So that's why I try to aim for between 70 and 80% of my calories from animal fat. Anything less than 60% calories from fat, you're going to start running into trouble. You really want it. There is some evidence to suggest that if you get more than 40% of your calories just from protein, you start running into problems.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So you want to sort of like 60-40 would be sort of as low fat as I would recommend people going. But, you look at animals in the wild, generally they're getting 70 or even 80% of their calories from fat, even herbivores, because, that's what they break down fiber into. We know that we're not herbivores because we don't break down fiber. That's another reason. We have an appendix. It's that big. It's a vestigial organ. Vestigial meaning that millions of years ago it used to do something. Now it does nothing. Well, millions of years ago it was a 4-foot long cecum, And that's where fiber would pack into and break down into short chain fatty acids, which is what the bacteria in a cow's gut does. It's not the cow that breaks it down. No vertebrate animal can break down cellulose. We can't break those bonds in the cellulose. So we need these bacteria to do it for us or for them. And we need cows to do it for us because we can't do it. And they break those down. They eat the fiber, they subsist on this, and they multiply and propagate. And as a byproduct, basically their waste are short chain fatty acids, which are 100% saturated. That's what the cow absorbs. And then these bacteria sort of die off, and the body breaks that down, and they get protein from those dead bacteria die off as well. And so that's what they're getting. They're getting fat and protein. They're actually not getting a lot of carbohydrates. And so a gorilla that just eats green leaves, they get about 70% of their calories from saturated fat. A cow gets roughly 80%. And if you look at primates, their brain size is directly related to the percent calories from fat that they get. And humans, we would get way more. We were eating mammoths and megafauna with tons and tons of fat. Eskimos are eating blubber, and so we actually have larger brains. And so we should think about that. We need to be feeding this brain. Gorillas have the smallest brain to body ratio. They get about 70% of their calories from saturated fat. All other primates get more than that, and you can sort of plot that graph.
So do you, okay, so then let's see. So what do you do for training? I mean, I know you've got to be busy with call and all those kinds of things. How does training even equate into this, or?
It's very difficult. It's very, very difficult. There is a gym at my hospital though. And so I do try to go in there. So like maybe sometimes I'll finish up and I'll just jet straight in there and just do like a quick, 45-minute to an hour workout. I normally like to work out for multiple hours on end. I used to just, when I had my home gym when I was in Seattle, like helping out my folks and back from Bangladesh, I was just, I would do all the things I needed to do during the day. And then at night I'd come home and I would just lift, and I'd put on like books on tape by like Thomas Sowell, who's like my favorite author and thinker. And I would just listen to Thomas Sowell for just hours. I would just lift for hours because I figured like if I'm doing something educational that I wanted to do or listen to anyway, I can justify working out for 4 hours, so that's what I did. I was just lifting.
Cool.
Every single day. And I got very good results from that. And I was building on a strong base, but I put in a lot of work and I could recover much easier. I figured out that I could, if I gave myself proper rest, I could just do an unlimited amount of sets and I wouldn't get sore. People just think I'm a liar when I say this, but it's really the soreness in your muscles are actually from these inflammatory factors in plants. And so I've eliminated those from my body. And so I don't get sore. So it doesn't matter how long I've been out of the gym. I was in Bangladesh, and I was way out of the gym for months. And then I came back and I was lifting weights. And I was just on, actually I wasn't even full carnivore. I was just not eating carbohydrates and grains. I was just eating like this green smoothie, which tasted like vomit, and then some meat and low fat. And then, and I wasn't getting sore. And then I was, and then I went, recognize, okay, no, actually we really are carnivores. Is something that I knew because 20 years ago when I took, cancer biology, my professor told us, this is how plants defend themselves. And this is a natural evolutionary state of these plants. And we were looking at it from a cancer perspective. So we were looking at carcinogens, and we were looking, and 22 years ago, we were taught that we had already discovered 136 known human carcinogens just in Brussels sprouts, and over 100 in mushrooms, and spinach, kale, lettuce, celery, cabbage, cucumber, broccoli, you name it. They all had 60, 80, over 100 known human carcinogens each, and they were quite abundant. We know from Professor Bruce Ames from Berkeley in 1989 when he published a study showing that there are 10,000 times more naturally occurring pesticides and insecticides in the plant, such as mushrooms or celery, than in the pesticides we spray on them, and that they were orders of magnitude more likely to cause cancer than the pesticides we spray on them, which is why we still have pesticides. People were trying to get these things banned because these are poisons. We shouldn't be eating these things. And he was pointing out, I was like, yeah, of course they are, but we've also been using these for 80 years and never had a problem. So, what's going on? So he studied this and looked at this. Yeah, it's a drop in the bucket. If you're going to eat the celery, the pesticides aren't changing the game. Now that may have changed. We use different pesticides and we Roundup and everything like that. Now I don't think that's a really good thing to use, but it's at the time they were comparing this to alar. That was the specific one they were looking at. They used for apples, and it's just like it was absolutely night and day the difference. So we were learning this in cancer biology, blown away by this. And just thought, like, wow, this is crazy. And I remember just looking around wildly, like, this has to be a joke. Just looking for like a TA, like, giggling in the corner or something like that. Just like, oh, he always says this. And there wasn't any. And so all of a sudden it dawned on us that I was like, geez, this guy's not kidding. And I remember thinking to myself, like, aren't vegetables still good for you though? And he just looked at us and he said, I don't eat salad. I don't eat vegetables. I don't let my kids eat vegetables. Plants are trying to kill you. So I was like, right, screw plants. And I just stopped, and I just, that was it. So that was why I was a no plant diet. And so I just went to the store. I'm like, well, everything's a plant. There's just plants and everything, breads and grains and pasta and, all these produce, obviously, but anything that was made had plants in it. And so I was going around, I was like, I walked by some eggs. I was like, okay, eggs don't come from plants. Like, oh, the meat bottle. Okay, meat doesn't come from eggs. Milk doesn't come from eggs. So I just ate eggs, meat, and milk, mostly just meat and eggs for the next 5 years until I sort of fell off it because I was playing professionally in England. I just couldn't get access to meat that I liked in the same way. And a lot of it was breaded. And so I was like, well, is it that big of a deal having some breaded? And I was like, it's probably, dose makes the poison. Like, is that big of a deal? But it was a big deal, and so I ended up actually not feeling as good. All of a sudden I was getting sore. I was getting these niggling injuries. And I was just like, oh, what the hell is going on? Like, why don't I feel as just superhuman amazing as I normally do? Am I not working out as much? Am I not pushing myself? Or am I just, I was 25 then. I was just like, is that it? Am I over the hump? Am I just dying now? Am I just breaking down? Which certainly when I was, 20, I was looking at other people that were 25 and looked like they were, on death's door, and I was like, Jesus, 25. And now I'm like, God, now I'm 25, so I'm dying, I was like, is that what's going on? And, looking back, it was just like, no, that was it. That's when I stopped eating plants. And that was the difference. I saw hard evidence that, humans actually are carnivores. That's the kind of animal we are. And I was like, that's it. That was the difference. That's what I was doing. I was eating as a carnivore. I was living as my biology, wanted me to live. And then I started feeling less good when I came off of that, and I slipped off of it inadvertently. I was very meat heavy anyway, almost exclusively ate meat anyway, but I would sort of eat other things as well. And those little things, they made all the difference to me. So it made a massive difference. And like I said, when I was playing rugby, during that time, I've never in my life been as fit as that, and I never will again, which is unfortunate. But I honestly, I remember thinking at the time, I was like, I don't think there's anyone else on earth that is in better shape than me. I don't know how they could have been, but just the amount that I was training and how hard I trained, I was at a dead sprint for every second of every practice and every game. And I could not get tired. That's why I felt like I could sprint a marathon, not just run it really fast, but actually be at a dead maxed out sprint the entire time. I honestly think I could have done that. And so, I was in very good shape, and that is very different after that, even eating little bits of this. So in the last sort of 5 years, when I rediscovered this, so I came back from Bangladesh and I would come out, I was like, no, that's it. Like, damn it. I knew plants were trying to kill me. I get rid of these damn things. And I got rid of them. And then I just started eating a lot more meat, and it just changed everything. Just dropping the green drink. I wasn't eating anything else. No carbs, no sugar, I wasn't drinking alcohol. Just this stupid green drink with spinach, kale, and broccoli. That was it. And that just tasted like just just battery acid. It was terrible. And then some meat, and not even a lot of meat. And it was very lean. And then then I switched over to just big ribeyes with a lot of fat, and stopped eating the greens. And I don't know, probably quadrupled my caloric intake, and I lost 20 pounds in 10 days. And then just started shredding fat and stacking on muscle. And then at that point I was realizing, like, I'm not getting sore. And I was thinking, I was like, well, I should be getting sore. I just did like a heavy leg day with like 12 heavy sets, and I wasn't sore the next day. And I was like, okay, well, what happened? I mean, I just working out like a little bitch or something? Am I not like pushing myself, you know? And so I was like, well, I didn't like walk out of there jelly legged and like where I was like barely like wobbling out of there, which normally you would do on a big heavy day like that. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I just didn't push myself hard enough, and like, but I was going to failure on every set, and I did 12 sets of heavy legs. And so I was like, all right, I'll do the same thing on my next leg day. And then at the end, I'll just keep doing squats, and I'll just keep doing sets of squats. So I did my 12 sets of other things, and then I just started doing squats. And I put on a book of Thomas Sowell's, and I just started listening to it. And I just, and given enough rest, I gave myself a few minutes rest between each set to where I was fully recovered, which was quite quick. And then I just kept doing sets and kept doing sets and kept doing sets. And eventually I got to the point where I looked at it, I had done another 20 sets of squats on top of the 12 I had already done. So I did 32 sets of heavy legs. And I was just looking at this and I was just feeling how my body felt. I'm like, I could literally keep doing this the rest of the night, but I've been here for 4 hours and I've got things to do. So I need to stop this now. And I had a
And
friend
this
of
would
mine.
have been somewhere in your mid 30s.
I was 38. Yeah.
You weren't young. I mean, you weren't a 20-year-old anymore.
No,
Yeah.
no, I was
Wow.
38 with bad knees. Yeah.
Mm.
And, so
That's impressive.
yeah. And so, a friend of mine called me and they're like, oh, hey, we should do this hike up Mount Si, which is like sort of this mountain in the beginnings of the Cascade Mountains outside of Seattle. And it's a big hike. It's like, 4.5 hours, something, or 3 hours, something like that up. And it's just switchbacks, 4.5 miles of just switchbacks, just straight up this mountain. And it's a miserable hike. It's absolutely awful. And they were like, oh, we should go do that. And I was like, let's take it easy. I may have just done something very stupid, because other times I've done like a really heavy leg day, even when I was in really good shape and I just pushed myself way past where I normally have gone before. I've literally been crippled. I've just been crippled for so long. And then one time I was literally like 2 weeks. I just couldn't walk. I was just absolutely in agony when I was in college doing that. And I was in so much pain. I was just like, oh, Jesus, I really don't want to do this again. And I'd done literally over double what I had done. In fact, that 12 set circuit, that was actually similar to that circuit that absolutely killed me for 2 weeks. And now I did, over double that. And so the next day I woke up and it was like I had done nothing. And I was walking up the stairs. I didn't feel anything. I started taking 2 at a time. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, there's something going on in my hamstrings, but they're not stiff. They're not sore. And I was like, right, let's go hiking. Went hiking 3 hours up this stupid mountain, and then came back down, felt great the whole time. And I was like, right, I'm ready to go play rugby again. And so I went out and went to training with my old team, Seattle Saracens, which is now part of the Major League Rugby circuit with the Seattle Seawolves. And so I went to the training with the Seawolves that night, and I felt great. I hadn't run in months, and before that I wasn't even in good shape. But I'd been in Bangladesh for however long, and then like I wasn't even in great shape before I left to Bangladesh. And now I was at a dead sprint the whole time, and I could keep up with these guys who had been training at a high level all the time that I'd been gone, and I felt fantastic. And the next day, I still wasn't sore, but I could tell like my muscles, like, oh, I've done some work on my muscles, but they don't hurt. And then 2 days after, that's usually the height of your inflammatory process, or usually when you're most sore. Still wasn't sore, but my hamstrings were saying, they're like, hey, we could keep doing this, but eventually you're going to tear something. That was basically the feeling that I got from it, but it wasn't sore, it wasn't stiff. And then I went out to get coffee with a friend of mine. I was like, okay, well, let's see what coffee does. Can I have coffee? Let's see what this does to my body.
I wanted to ask that if you can have coffee.
Yeah. So this is why I don't, is because I wasn't sore at all, and I'd really pushed myself hard. And then I had 1 cup of black coffee, and within 20 minutes, I started feeling this stiffness creep up, like certainly in my hamstrings, but also in my lower back and my glutes. And I was like, I wasn't nearly as sore as I normally would have been, certainly from that amount of exertion. But it was stiff and it was sore. I was like, oh, what's happening? Oh, I could feel it happening in real time. And I stayed, a little, it didn't limit me all that much, but it was definitely noticeable and it was uncomfortable for 2 days, 2 full days that stayed in me. So that tells me that there's things in there that are causing inflammation that I don't necessarily want. And so if I have 1 cup of coffee a day, I'm just going to stay sore my whole life. And
Wow.
I don't need that. So, that's how I normally like to work out. but obviously I don't have that time anymore. But so when I do have time, I still try to work out like 4 days a week, lift 4 days a week, do a bit of cardio. Normally I like playing rugby and doing sprint work, but I just don't have that luxury right now. So it's mostly in the gym, doing some cycling. On the weekends, I might go, run stairs, sprint up stairs or hills, because I just really like that. I think that's a really good workout. I really like doing sprint work, really high intensity, explosive wind sprint sort of work. And weights are obviously very good as well. So that's what I like to do. I've really only been, I think I've only been in the gym probably 3 times in the last month, at least in the last month and a half. And then I was in sort of the Philippines. And then before that, it was really sort of once a month maybe. But every now and then I'll just, rip out like 100 push-ups or something like that. And, some air squats as well. So I'm sort of doing something, but I'm certainly not in my normal routine. But because of my diet, I maintain it, so much better than I ever would have. And so,
yeah, so you're not losing muscle mass, even though you're not lifting.
No. And I'm not gaining fat either. So I'm still staying very lean and very muscular. And I'm not as muscular or as jacked as I would be if I was working out regularly. But I still look extremely in shape, even though I am not in shape. I'm absolutely not in shape. But I look at it and I feel good too. And I can jump back in the gym and I can just sort of, and my weights even don't change that much. I mean, I can't do as much as I could, but it doesn't drop off to the extent that it would have previously. Like if you take a couple months off in the off season, you don't really train that hard, and then you're sort of getting back into it, and you're like, oh my God, I'm weak now, and you have to like really build back up. I really don't have that problem.
So you're just stable. You're just in a place of stability.
Very stable, yeah. And so I will lose the mass, and I will, especially if I'm not eating as much, to maintain that weight and that musculature. But it takes a lot longer, and I'll never gain fat, because I'm just my body just tells me exactly what I need, and so I'll always stay exactly as lean. No, if I'm working out heavily and playing rugby, I actually do get leaner. I just get leaner and harder, but whether I'm lifting weights or not lifting weights, I generally stay roughly the same body fat percentage.
So so we've been on the show for 2 hours. It's flown by.
Yeah.
And I'm going to actually need to, I think this is a good spot to end, but I'd love to hook back up again and have some additional conversations. I actually have several comments, but I'll ask you about those if you can hang on for just a second afterwards. But thank you for taking time, and is there anything that you would want to kind of end with or leave with the audience?
Well, I think just in general, I think everyone's really just trying to do what's right, and they're trying to do the best thing for themselves and the world. And I think it's very admirable. Obviously, there are a lot of different arguments out there. I happen to make one of them, and it's just a matter of everyone just sort of understanding that two people can look at the same information and honestly and intelligently come to different conclusions, and that's completely fine. That's why we should have conversations like this. That's why you should challenge me and say, okay, well, what about the environment, and what about this, and what about that? Those are important topics, and those are important things to talk about. And so I never have a problem with people asking me, because we should be talking about it. People should be asking me. I'm the outlier here, myself and some others. We're the ones saying, actually, everything you've been told is wrong. We should do things very differently. Burden of proof is on me. I'm happy to bear it. It's just a matter of having an open mind and being willing to engage in these sorts of conversations, and maybe look at people and listen to their arguments that are maybe outside of what they normally would look at or think. It's like, John Stuart Mill said, if you only know your side of the argument, then you really don't know much, because if you haven't heard it in the most persuasive form from the horse's mouth, from the people that can say it most persuasively, then you really don't even know what the argument is. You don't even know what the discussion is. If you're just hearing this, if the people are just hearing the arguments from Dr. Greger saying, well, meat's bad and here's why, well, maybe that's not actually the real arguments. Maybe those aren't actually the arguments that I would make. And maybe, me saying, well, this is why plants are bad, don't just listen to me, listen to Gregor, listen to other people, and then come to a decision yourself. And people like Gregor, I would love to talk to the guy. I would love to talk to, every different vegan, because I've went to their websites. I've gone to their, read their publications, looked at, okay, what is your evidence? What's going on here? This looks good to me, but what am I missing? And I wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing something, and just looking at things from being guilty of confirmation bias. Like I just wanted to know the answer. And so I think it's very important. I looked at their stuff, and I thought that it didn't really hold up. And that's why, I have these conversations, and I have these conversations with vegans and vegetarians all the time. And I have a 100%, conversion rate at the moment, because, I know the arguments, and I know the flaws in them, and I have a lot of other information. So I think it's just very important, wherever you stand, just be open to having conversations, and being open to take in new information that might, scare you, and might chuck your whole belief system, because, we are all coming from I think most of us are coming at this from a very honest place.
Yeah.
And so, if we do that, we should just be, okay, all right, I don't think I agree with you, but what's your argument? And then, like, I may have my mind changed. I don't know everything. There could be information that comes out, and I'm always willing to listen and learn. So, I've done debates with, we did a carnivore versus vegan debate with several other doctors and researchers here in Australia, the Australian College of Nutritional and Environmental Medicine. And I was sort of interested in this. I was like, okay, we've got this vegan cardiologist, and this expert on the gut biome, and a professor or a doctor in pediatrics who has a master's in public health from Harvard. So it's like, okay, well, these are very credentialed people, and they're coming at this from a vegan standpoint. I'm thinking, like, okay, I know these arguments that have been made, but are these guys going to hit me with a new argument, a new something thing? Like, how am I going to approach this? So I was preparing in a lot of ways, but honestly, everything that they said were all the same arguments that I just seen 100 times. Cholesterol is bad for you. It's going to cause heart disease. No, it's not. Saturated fat's bad for you. It's implicating all these diseases. No, it's not. Plants are super good for you. They're really beneficial. No, they're really not. You're cherry picking. You're looking at, it has these vitamins and these things in there. Okay, but it has 200,000 other chemicals in there as well. What do those do? You have to look at it in the big picture, and then making the argument for environment as well. But they're the same arguments. So you do sort of see these things repeated. And so as long as we're willing and able to just have an open mind and have these discussions, I think that more people will just be able to coexist, even if they make different decisions.
Sure.
And I think that's fine. It's just having good conversations, I think, is important.
Okay. Well, let's keep the conversation going. And it's a big thank you. I hope we've made a new friendship here, Anthony. And stay here after the show, and we'll just peace out, everybody. And thank you for joining Topic Discuss.
Thank you very much for having me.